The loft smelled like sugar and dish soap. Sweet, but faintly burnt. Like something overworked and pretending to hold together. It fit me perfectly. I'd been here 2 weeks. Sleeping above a bakery, where the mixers started before dawn. The hum of dough being beaten replaced the tap of my father's ring. That sound used to fill the kitchen like a countdown. Now it was gone. And I didn't miss it. At first, I didn't have a plan. I opened my laptop and stared at blank tabs. Trying to figure out what could be built from the scraps of someone else's decision. I tried everything: dropshipping, surveys, freelancing, but every easy win reeked of desperation. So I went back to the only thing that ever made sense to me: patterns. Words. Numbers. Data. That didn't lie. I started studying late into the night. The library's Wi-Fi was weak. But it was quiet. And that was all I needed. I devoured tutorials on SEO, copywriting, affiliate funnels. I built my first real site around something simple: portable camping gear, because it was what I could afford to understand. Each article was another brick. Each failure was another lesson. I tested headlines, rewrote meta tags, rebuilt pages until the analytics finally moved. When that first payout came in, $360 for a week's worth of sales, I didn't celebrate. I just stared at the number until it stopped looking real. That money wasn't much, but it was mine. Untouched. Earned. There was a neon sign in a thrift shop downtown, an old one from Ryan's first startup. His company name. Half the bulbs burned out. I bought it for $15 and hung it above my desk. When it flickered to life, it glowed soft orange over my keyboard. I laughed, because I realized I'd taken one of his trophies and turned it into a lamp. Spectacle turned into substance. That felt like revenge done right. The days blurred together after that. The loft grew warm and sticky with sugar air. My fingers sore from typing. The hallway always smelled like burnt toast and silence. It wasn't peaceful yet, but it was mine. Every morning I'd wake up, brew instant coffee, and open my dashboard. Clicks. Conversions. Tina numbers crawling upward. Proof that I wasn't crazy for leaving. I started signing each post the same way. 3 lines that became a quiet oath: no degree. No help. No excuses. It wasn't branding. It was armor. A reminder that the person they called naive had learned to build proof from nothing. Then one afternoon, I saw it. My parents' smiling faces in the alumni newsletter. A cheerful headline: proud of our daughter, taking a reflective gap year before college. I reread it 3 times. Reflective gap year. As if this exile had been my idea. As if giving up my tuition was a spiritual retreat. My stomach twisted. But then something colder settled in. They weren't apologizing. They were rewriting. And worse? They thought they could get away with it. I didn't post about it. Didn't text anyone. I just stared at my screen until the letters stopped blurring. Anger used to burn fast in me. Now it froze. I scrolled through the metrics again. My sight slowly inching forward. And realized the truth. I wasn't angry because they lied. I was angry because they didn't think I'd have the receipts. That night, I walked downstairs and sat by the bakery window. Watching people line up for bread they hadn't baked. I opened my notebook and started sketching out a plan. Not a fight. Not a scream. Just numbers. Charts. And a timeline. I wanted my story organized. Documented. Undeniable. If they were going to play PR games, I'd bring the data. I wouldn't shout. I'd show. By the time the sun came up, the first outline of my future was sitting on the table beside a half-eaten croissant. The answer wasn't going to be another argument. It would be a ledger. They didn't apologize. They never do. When people like that lose control, they double down. A week after the alumni newsletter went out, my mom posted a photo. Ryan standing in front of a rented office. Balloons in the background. A caption dripping with pride. So proud of both our kids. She wrote, one chasing his dreams. One taking time to find herself. I almost laughed. Find myself, I wasn't lost. They just didn't like the version of me that stopped saying yes. Then came the messages. Dad, first, we need to talk about what you've done. Done what survived without their permission. Mom followed. You're being dramatic. We're all part of this family. Be proud you're supporting your brother's dream. I stared at the screen for a long time before replying. Then I didn't. Some message don't deserve oxygen. Ryan reached out next. His tone was casual. Like none of this ever happened. He wrote, "Hey, I've got a new project in the works. You'd be perfect for the marketing side. Let's rebuild together." I didn't even open the attachment. But curiosity won later. The pitch deck was all buzzwords. AI this. Blockchain that. Future of automation. It was nothing but noise wearing a tech suit. Still. He was trying to raise $100,000 in funding. My tuition money times 2. For a second, I wondered if our parents realized the pattern, throwing good money after his bad ideas. Hoping this time it would make him real. They called that evening. Mom did the talking. "Sweetheart, Ryan could use your help," she said. "You've always been good with this computer stuff. Maybe you could guide him." I could hear the pearls clinking against her phone case. "I'm building something of my own," I said. She sighed. That soft, weaponized disappointment. "You're still young, Luna. Helping family never goes to waste." That's when it clicked in my head like a switch. Wrong audience. I hung up, opened my laptop, and began mapping out what I'd been too scared to define. Not a blog. Not a hobby. A system. I drafted the skeleton of what would become my first public case study. I laid out timelines. Screenshots. Anonymized dashboards. Every dollar earned. Every hour logged. Every mistake labeled like an exhibit in a museum. If they wanted a narrative, I'd give them one they couldn't edit. I wasn't interested in proving I was right. I was interested in building something that couldn't be erased. While Ryan was out there posing with ribbon cuttings, I was grinding at the bakery's back table. Hands dusted with flour. Typing keyword clusters into spreadsheets. He had photographers. I had data. He had buzzwords. I had receipts. Late one night, I paused mid-edit. Me fingers cramped. And laughed quietly. The absurdity of it all hit me. My family was out there performing Unity while I was documenting proof of abandonment. But even that thought didn't hurt anymore. It was freeing. The next morning, another message from Dad popped up. "We just want what's best for everyone." I didn't answer. Instead, I looked at the growing folder on my desktop: charts, exports, performance sheets, and renamed it version 1. That was the moment I realized revenge didn't have to be loud. It could be clinical, meticulous, bulletproof. They wanted a stage. Fine. I'd bring the audit trail. I never announced what I was building. I just kept moving. Quiet and steady. Until the shape of it started to make sense. Marissa and I met in a local startup forum. She'd just sold her UX design app and wanted to build something real again. Something that didn't depend on hype. I told her what I was doing. Niche content sites. Affiliate funnels. SEO as armor. Not vanity. She listened. Smiled. And said, "Dustproof. That's what you're making. Something no storm can ruin." The name stuck. Within weeks, we registered it, bought the domain, and built the foundation. SOPs. Editorial, calendars. Outreach templates. No fluff. Nah, vision board nonsense. Just structure. The kind I never had growing up. The clients came quietly, at first people who'd read my posts and wanted to know how I'd done it. A 10-hour consulting audit turned into a retainer. A retainer turned into referrals. Before I realized it, the revenue charts were breaking the 6-figure line each month. $100,000. I stared at that number the way I used to stare at tuition breakdowns. Same digits. Different ownership. Marissa and I worked side by side in the loft. The old neon sign humming above us. Flour dust from downstairs drifted through the vents. I'd breathe it in and think, this is what building from scratch smells like. Then one afternoon, Claire, the event planner from the museum, called. She was organizing the annual alumni gala. The same crowd my parents worshipped. "We're looking for small business sponsors," she said. Would Dustproof be interested? The irony hit like static. That event had once been my family's social altar. They'd post pictures for weeks, tagged in every shot like royalty. I thought of them posing under chandeliers while I counted change for coffee. "Yes?" I said. "We'll sponsor." Marissa raised an eyebrow. You sure about that? Absolutely, I said. But no banners. No speeches. Just one donor tile. Small. Clean. With a QR code. We worked for weeks on what that QR would lead to a new page on our site titled, "The Tuition That Wasn't How Losing Everything Became a $1 Million Education." It wasn't a rant. It was surgical charts. Dates. Anonymized screenshots. The story told through proof. When we delivered the payment, Claire smiled. You want any taglines on the tile? Yeah, I said. Just the company name. Dustproof. That's all. The night before the gala, I walked through the museum's glass corridors. Staff were mounting the tiles along the donor wall. There it was, mine. Small and silver. Glowing under the soft lights. Dustproof. Beneath it, the QR code shimmered, like a secret, waiting to be found. I stood there for a long moment, tracing the edges with my fingertip. This wasn't revenge. It was symmetry. For years, they'd told my story for me. Tomorrow, the truth would hang on their wall, and I wouldn't have to say a word. When I left the museum, the city lights flickered on like quiet applause. I could almost hear the bakery mixer from blocks away. The same steady rhythm that replaced my father's ring tap. The tile was mounted now. The room would do the math. A few weeks after the gala announcement, my phone buzzed with a message from Erica. My cousin. Not sure if it's true, she wrote. But rumor is Ryan's incubator pitch looks a little familiar. She attached 2 screenshots, his deck and one of my public posts. I didn't even need to zoom in. Whole paragraphs were identical. Marissa glanced over my shoulder. Wow, she said quietly. He didn't even bother to change the color palette. I could have ranted. I could have called my parents. Demanded an explanation. Started another family war. Instead, I opened my laptop. Side by side. I compared his slides with my published framework, the same layout. The same flow. The same words. Then I did what I do best, documented. I built an appendix for my existing case study. Labeled, Comparative Framework Timeline. Screenshots. Version histories. Timestamps. Everything neat and traceable. No adjectives. Just data. At the bottom of the file, I added a short note. Integrity doesn't need volume. Only evidence. When it was done, I attached the document to an email addressed to the incubator's compliance inbox. No emotion. No accusation. Just, dear team, I'm writing to share information that may assist your review of current applicant materials. Documentation attached for reference. 2 days later, they replied. 1 sentence. Thank you for your submission. Initiating ethics review. That was all I needed to know. I sat back, closed my laptop, and let out a slow breath. Not relief, something else. A kind of quiet understanding of why people like my parents never stop pushing a story, even when it's built on sand. The truth is, they don't protect lies because they believe them. They protect lies because the alternative, facing how hollow they've become, would shatter them. Their entire identity is a house built on borrowed money and borrowed praise. They can't afford to lose control. So, they pretend losing you is leadership. That's the illusion of power. When the wallet's empty, talk louder. Pretend harder. And hope the echo convinces the room. But echoes fada. And this time, I had something stronger proof. A week later, Ryan's listing disappeared from the incubator's site. No announcement. No apology. Just gone. Erica texted again. Guess who got paused for review, lol? I didn't reply. That night, my inbox pinged again, this time from the incubator itself. A polite message thanking me for my transparency and professional handling, and asking if I'd consider mentoring their next accelerator cohort on ethical content scaling. I reread it twice, smiling at the irony. While Ryan was trying to sell my work as his own, I was being paid to teach it. I leaned back in my chair. The neon sign, glowing faint orange above me. In that light, everything made sense. I didn't need to expose anyone. They'd done that themselves. The bakery downstairs turned off its ovens for the night. The air smelled like cooling sugar and victory quiet. Clean. Earned. That was the moment I realized, sometimes, justice doesn't need noise. It just needs patience and a paper trail. Ryan's story was collapsing in silence. And mine was just beginning. The museum lights were blinding. All white and glass. The kind of place where every reflection looked like a second version of yourself. My parents loved that sort of shine, the illusion of perfection. They stood near the front, shaking hands, smiling, like everything was exactly how it should be. My mother's pearl bracelet caught the light each time she moved. For a second, I wondered if she still remembered the morning she'd traded my future for my brother's pruse. Probably not. People who rewrite history never look back at the first draft. I was there to speak on a panel about sustainable online business. Nothing dramatic. Nothing personal. Just me. A microphone. And a few slides. I'd rehearsed the opening line 100 times. But when I looked out into that crowd, seeing them among donors and faculty, the words came out calm. Effortless. Everything I build starts from loss. I said. Loss of comfort. Loss of certainty. Sometimes loss of family. But data doesn't lie. And it doesn't need permission. The screen behind me lit up with the first graph traffic curves. Revenue bands. Steady, upward motion. No names. No companies. Just proof. I talked about process SEO as storytelling. Structure as safety. How to scale value without selling your soul. Each sentence was measured. Each pause deliberate. Halfway through, I caught Ryan in the back. He was leaning against the wall. Face pale. Eyes flicking between the slides and the donor tile that bore my company's name. He knew. I didn't need to say a word. I closed with the same 3 lines printed on every site I'd ever published. No degree. No help. No excuses. Applause rolled through the room like a wave. Polite but heavy. Somewhere in that silence, I felt the weight shift, the control they'd spent years hoarding, slipping right through their hands. Afterward, I walked through the lobby. The donor wall gleamed under the soft lighting. There it was. Dust-proof. Small. Silver. Permanent. The QR code shimmered like a heartbeat. Each scan another ripple of truth traveling through the crowd. I stopped at a display case nearby, a cracked family photo from some old exhibit. The irony almost made me laugh. The caption beneath it read, "Fragments of belonging." My mom approached quietly. Her smile trembled. "We need to talk about what you've done," she whispered. I looked at her, at the pearls resting on her wrist, and said, "I already did." Then I thanked the curator for the microphone and walked away. The next morning, my phone filled with calls. I didn't answer. I didn't need to. The truth was public now, stitched into the walls of their favorite place. Instead, I wrote checks. Small ones that meant everything. The first dust-proof microgrants for first-generation creators, people who reminded me of who I used to be. I posted a link to a free guide titled, "How to Say No to Family Financial Manipulation." No email sign-ups. No sales funnel. Just help. Later that night, I sat in my studio. The neon sign glowed above me. Soft and steady. Beneath it, a printed photo of the donor tile. I picked up a single pearl bead I'd found on the loft floor weeks ago. Probably one that fell from my mother's bracelet. I dropped it into a glass jar labeled, "Things I Don't Carry." The air was still. Quiet. Almost sacred. I opened my old spreadsheet, the one I used to track their approval, and hit delete. Not to erase the past, but to release it. For the first time, I didn't feel like I'd won or lost. I just felt free. If this hit home, share it with someone who needs proof they're not crazy. And tell me which moment flipped the switch for you, the donor tile, the receipts, or the part where silence finally got the last word.